Owen, how's it going, man?
Hi, you're right. Can you hear me?
Yep. Am my audio coming through okay and that, yeah?
Yeah, sounds good, mate. Sounds good.
Yeah, good stuff, man. How are you doing?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Not bad. Just cracking on.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
know.
basking in the FA Cup final glory, and then and then back to it.
Yeah, of course, man. I mean, I'll ask you about that a little bit later on, but I don't suppose you got the chance to watch the Europa League final the other day.
I saw some of it, but not all of it. But by all means, it was very much a masterclass tactically, wasn't it? By Unai.
Yeah, as always in the Europa League. But I mean, like, after the season that Everton have had, I'm very much out of love with football. But when you see a game of football like that, you know, got and
Yeah.
then the penalties, 11-10 on penalties, but goalkeepers taking penalties. Like some of the penalties. Did you see the penalties?
Yeah, I saw some of them, and De Gea missed, didn't he?
Yeah.
Which was a shocker. But it unbelievable that it goes that far. Like we haven't seen that in ages.
No, I know. Like honest to God, mate. Like some of the penalties. Pau Torres, the Villarreal centre half. Francis Coquelin as well. I don't
Mhm.
know if you saw his, but Jesus Christ, I never knew he could strike a ball like that. Um, but yeah, as I was saying, it's one of those things that after the season Everton have had, it really makes you sort of fall back in love with
Yeah,
football again. And I guess because we're on the sort of in this part of the world, obviously we're exposed to the English media, and I think that the narrative that we were being sold of, the mighty Man United, they're gonna just brush aside the Spanish underdogs.
yeah,
I don't know. I think there was something very gratifying about seeing Villarreal do the job.
yeah. I agree with you completely. It was all the talk was about Man United, and then to see that kind of tactical game plan put in place and to totally outthink Solskjaer, it's great to see, as particularly as the underdog is always good to see winning if it's not your team.
Yeah, oh, of course. And I mean, we'll get on to you now, mate. And talking of underdogs, um, yes, I know Leicester narrowly missed out on the Champions League, but you've had one hell of a season to remember, haven't you?
It's been an unbelievable season. I think as you say, they've missed out on Champions League football, and that was something that clearly Leicester fans would have wanted at the start of the season. That would have been the main aim, finishing the top four because of the finances that are available through the Champions League, and what that would mean for the club, being able to push on and be, the club that they want to be going forward. They want to be in and amongst the top four every year, and to miss out on it 2 years in a row, despite spending so much of the season in the Champions League, is difficult, but you have to couple a top European football once again with the fact that they've also won the FA Cup for the first time in their history, played some unbelievable football, and with all the injuries that they had as well. I think there's a list of maybe 8 or 9 players that missed more than 10 games. So there are an awful lot of players that missed a lot of football as well. So to come away from all of that, and with bringing young players through like Luke Thomas and James Justin, who we saw incredible performances from this season, to win an FA Cup, some fans have turned around and said, I'll give a table and an FA Cup win this year, and I can understand where they're coming from because they've never ever won the FA Cup before. But to finish in the top five and win an FA Cup is unbelievable for a club like Leicester.
Yeah, of course. And I guess from a media perspective, of course, you're involved with BBC Radio Leicester Sport. I think covering any FA Cup game for the first time is special. I remember covering Accrington Stanley. I think it was against Cheltenham a couple of years ago. It was only like the second or third round, but even then, to be covering your first FA Cup game, it really is something special. Um, Now a final, on the other hand,
Yeah,
yeah. Tell me
that
what that's like.
that is yeah, it's totally different proposition because from a from a work point of view, it's huge. It's like a thing in your career that well, I look at the people that I work with at Radio Leicester and people who did my job before me, none of which have ever covered an FA Cup final, because it's just been that long since they were last in a final back in 1969. So to be able to cover it from a professional point of view was incredible. An FA Cup final, whoever it is, was always going to be special. But the build up, the week of the build up was so intense, so busy. We had to put in so many plans, and I literally just spent probably too long, actually, I'm not going to put a number on it, too long making packages and editing audio and listening through to interviews with people and scouring across the BBC trying to find the best content for us to run on our program. And we did a 2-hour build up ahead of the game, which was intense. Normally we only do sort of an hour, but we went the full shebang from inside Wembley, and it was one of those rare days where everything kind of fell into place and everything just went right. I know I can sit here and say that it was the best show that I've ever presented. So an FA Cup final, it's not bad to deliver your best show, I don't think. But everything was just good. The show went really well. The commentary from our commentary team was class. Leicester, obviously, winning the FA Cup always helps the programming there. But I'm a Leicester fan, and I used to listen to Radio Leicester before I worked there, and it felt very honouring to be there for Radio Leicester and to be delivering that FA Cup final to people who 10 years ago were me, and just listening from home and being able to do that was a real moment where I thought, this is going quite well.
Yeah, definitely, man. I'm absolutely buzzing for you. And before talking about the game itself, which was a cracking game of football, and oh my God, that Yuri Tielemans goal was mind blowing. But you touched on it there. It was obviously so special for Leicester, being that it was eventually, of course, their first FA Cup in their history. But there's a narrative that often runs throughout the FA Cup is that it's lost its significance down the years. Now, you see things that, things such as the European Super League and the increased importance of the likes of European football and the revenues that come from European football. That your average Joe or your fans' attention is switched away from the likes of the FA Cup to these sorts of major tournaments and major streams of revenue. Sort of brings me back to what I was brought up on, obviously, when Everton were actually good and could win trophies. There was obviously like a massive fanfare around the FA Cup. You'd have half the city going down to London by any means necessary to catch a glimpse of the team at Wembley. But I feel like in this instance, there was somewhat of that old magic rekindled about this particular game, obviously with the reappearance of fans, like a significant number, of course, with it being Wembley Stadium in comparison to the other Premier League games that we've seen. So could you maybe go into what that was like, just being there? As you say, you're a Leicester City fan yourself, but to have fans in attendance for that game, how special was it to you?
Yeah, fans, it was unbelievable. Now, of course, there were some games earlier, like you say, in the Premier League season that had a small number of fans, like 2,000 fans or whatever. But it was electric. It was ridiculous, and it's hard because it was almost, you have to fight with them on a regular basis. Part of sort of my job is that we're soaking up the atmosphere pre-match. Now, through the whole of this season and the majority of last season, we've not been able to do that because the grounds are just empty and it's just music being played into an empty stadium, and that's all it has been. And it really sucks the soul out of football not having the fans there. And then they come back in that kind of number as well. They reckon there are only 6,000 actual Leicester fans in there, which is a load of rubbish. There is no chance. There was the whole allocation were in blue and white, and it was just that proper Leicester fan base. And you could see that when they scored, when Leicester scored, there was no one who was just sort of clapping, oh yeah, I'm just here as sort of a neutral. No. Everyone was going unbelievably mental. So it's about having the fans back in there, fighting with them pre-match because they were making so much noise and you're having to fight with your voice with theirs. And one of the moments that I remember most was we were on Wembley Way reporting before the game and doing sort of like inserts into our programs before and talking to fans as they arrived. And after we finished, we went and put the stuff back in the car, got all the kit back out, and we're walking towards where we pick up our sort of accreditation to get in. And there was just fans just singing away to our right-hand side on Wembley Way, and a couple of thousand Leicester fans just singing songs that we've not heard for over a year. And I just thought, this football is getting back now. And it was a really special, like, spine-tingling moment that you just thought, this is it. It just filled you with like almost euphoria. Like I just couldn't believe it. And I thought, what is that? And obviously then you realize and you hear the songs, and being inside the stadium with those fans was incredible. And the noise when, as you say, when Youri Tielemans hit that rocket into the top corner was outrageous. And I think that was just from me in the press box as well, because I went mental as well. It was normally, obviously you have to remain neutral sort of thing. There was no neutral on that day, I'm afraid.
No, rightly so as well. I mean, like, you've brought it up now, so let's talk about it. I mean, similar to you with the Europa League final, I only really saw the highlights of the game of the FA Cup final. But obviously, the instances that come to mind are the Tielemans goal, and those tremendous saves from Schmeichel toward the end of the game. Just generally as a lover of football and from the tactical perspective of the sport, like, was it an interesting game to watch? I mean, I guess if you could put that Leicester fan in you aside.
Yeah, no, it was an interesting game, and I think you sort of, the fact that you as someone who saw the highlights and doesn't necessarily, it doesn't support either side. That it's easier for you, I suppose. But it was a good game. I thought it was tense. It was a proper cup final, and it was end to end, but no real sort of huge chances. It was just very, very scrappy, and you could tell the nerves were there. But then in the second half, it really opened up, and Leicester didn't start very well at all. And, Chelsea were all over them. Mason Mount was picking up a really great pocket of space between the lines of Leicester's midfield and the back line as well. And when he picks up that position, it's dangerous because he can spray the ball wide, he can slide someone through, he can hit them from range. And Timo Werner as well, getting on the ball and showcasing his pace. But the longer the game went on, the more sort of Leicester wrestled back control. And it was so important that Leicester got into half-time at 0-0. If Chelsea score in that first half, I don't think Leicester probably win that game, because they were on the ascendancy, and once they get that goal, they can relax then, and they can be in total control of that game. But because they didn't, Leicester were able to wrestle it back bit by bit, and they came out in the second half and looked like a different team. And Youri Tielemans just started taking control of the midfield like we know he can. He's one of those midfielders, and we've seen it a couple of times with James Maddison this season, actually, that he's a midfielder who, when it really gets tough and it really starts getting really tense in games, sometimes he struggles to dig in the same way that Youri Tielemans does, where he can really he starts putting his body weight around. He was, shoulder barging Timo Werner and Mason Mount all over the place. He was running the midfield, and then obviously he picked the ball up 30 yards out and just smashed it right into the top bin, and it was a ridiculous goal. But
I can't think of a better FA Cup final goal, I've got to be honest.
Yeah, well, that's what we were saying. That will actually go down as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, FA Cup final goal of all time, particularly when you consider the context, the significance around it. The first game where there were a huge number of fans back in the ground. Leicester in their first FA Cup final since 1969 as the underdogs, having never won the competition, and then he just rifles that one right into the top bin.
Oh my God. Like the technique as it just kept rising, and you just knew where it was going. You knew where it was going when it left his boot.
Yeah, as soon as he hit it, you just knew, and they're the great goals, and it looked like it was still picking up speed as it hit the net, and that was what was most sort of ridiculous about it, is that it's as it's gone past Kepa, it's still picking up this speed, and it didn't even look like he hit it that hard, but clearly he did, and there was no way any keeper on this planet stops that goal.
Yeah.
But then, as you rightly said, you know, it's not just Yuri Tillemans who's to thank for that, because two outstanding saves. Probably one of the, you know, the Schmeichel save from Mason Mount probably goes up there. It's as good as the Yuri Tillemans goal because of, you know, the significance of it, and probably goes up there as one of the greatest FA Cup final saves as well.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, obviously, you know, the game concludes. It moves on to, you know, Leicester, the FA Cup champions. What is it like for you as a media personnel? Obviously, you've done so much preparation for the game in and of itself. Of course, a lot from, you know, it's sort of like just common knowledge for you being a Leicester fan. But what is that process like? Because I don't think I'm ever going to fucking experience it, of like trying to contain yourself and relay a good broadcasting package, but you've just seen your club win the first ever FA Cup. What was that process like amongst the elation?
Well, once Yuri Tillemans scored, and once Casper made that save, I thought they're doing this. There's no way. There's nothing that I can prep for because obviously we have a post match program as well, which was about an hour and a half long, and I didn't write any notes down. There were no notes in my book. Normally it's filled, you know, it's crammed full, and I just thought there's no point writing any notes down today, because literally the only thing for the post match program that I need is just the feeling of what it is, and just the reaction to Leicester City winning the FA Cup, and the fans in the stadium. You know, you can just, and obviously there was the trophy lift, and we knew that was going to happen, and all those different bits and bobs. And we had an interview with Brendan Rodgers that we always have every single game as well. But yeah, it was one of those where I remember looking down at my pad and it being like 10 minutes to go, and I got nothing written down. And normally that would stress me out a little bit. I'd be thinking, oh God, I don't know what I'm going to talk about for an hour post match. But on this one, I just thought, I don't need this today, because they're going to do it. They are going to do it.
Yeah.
It was just that feeling of the people listening to our radio station are Leicester fans, and they want to hear the reaction to Leicester winning the FA Cup. And the best way that we can do that is just by telling everyone what is happening and getting people on the air to talk about it. And we had loads of callers, loads of texts, loads of tweets, and we just went through, and it was the same after the semi-final as well, against Southampton. Again, you don't need notes after a game like that. You just have to feel those big games, and you know, that for me was probably, on a personal note, that was probably a step in my career. Now I look back at it, that was pretty significant, because you know, I was in a position where I could do that. And you know, when I started this job, when I started doing this, I don't think I would have been able to do that. I would have been, you know, scribbling down notes and not taking in the atmosphere of the day, and not taking in, you know, what was actually happening in the game, and how the fans were reacting, and how people online were reacting. But it was just, I suppose, a little bit of experience just to go, no, we don't need this today. We just need to feel and just tell everyone what's happening.
Yeah. And that's wonderful that you're at that point in your career where you're able to just go off the feel of the moment, which I do want to get into in a little bit. But just on, you know, sticking with the football side of things, and Leicester in particular, I mean, one thing that I think I've found over my many years of watching football is that I know there's the cliche that winning is a good habit, but I really do feel like winning trophies amongst everything else is a habit, and I think that's proven over time with the majority of sides. Something that I like to label as sort of situational greatness, where when placed in a certain scenario, they can rise to the occasion and they can get the job done. Looking back over the last couple of years, mate, Leicester have won their fair share of trophies. Of course, there was the Premier League success in 15-16, I believe that was. And a couple of seasons prior to that, won the championship as well.
Yeah, they won the league. They won League One back in 2009,
Okay.
and within 10 years they were playing in the Champions League quarter final.
Yeah.
So, and it's interesting that you say that, because it is a thing for a club to build, and for a club to continue getting better and try to, and you'll know this as an Everton fan, try and disrupt that hierarchy that of greed at the top of the Premier League that is just ridiculous. And you mentioned the European Super League earlier on. That FA Cup final win shows you exactly why the European Super League is a disgraceful idea, and why the top six are running a little bit scared, because other clubs are recruiting better than them and have, well, quite frankly, they've just got their shit together better than them, and clubs like Leicester are doing that.
Yeah.
But yes, situational greatness is. I like that phrase. I'll definitely be nicking that off you. But Leicester now can go to sign players in the summer who they want to sign, and put an FA Cup final, FA Cup trophy in front of them, and Europa League football, and this is how close we got, but we think you're the bit that will get us over the line, sort of thing. And they can do that now. And as you say, winning is a habit, and winning trophies is a habit. And now those players have got a little bit of a taste of that. Particularly the younger players, they'll want that more and more and more. And when Brendan Rodgers first came to the club, he said in his first ever press conference, my remit here is to get this club into European football and win trophies. And he's done that, and he keeps doing it over the seasons that he's been here as well. And he's rebuilt this side now into a force in the Premier League. And it feels so strange saying that as someone who grew up watching really mediocre Championship and League One football, but that is the fact. And I think that Leicester fans probably need to be at a point now where they sit back and they go, you know what? No, finishing outside of European place is just not acceptable for this club anymore, based on the players they have, based on the history, the recent history that they have, and the manager, and the money that they do have to spend, which is not clearly as much as anywhere near any of the top six clubs, or maybe even as much as Everton are able to spend.
Yeah, no.
But their recruitment is so clever, and as long as they keep doing that, they will find themselves in the Champions League spots, and I'm sure will find themselves winning more trophies soon.
Holding back the envy, mate. I've got to be honest. I'm holding back the envy, but interesting point on the managers, which I do want to get into. But by the way, did I make an error there? Was it League One instead of the Championship that they won? How did they get up out of the Championship into the Premier?
Yeah. So they won League One in 2009. They won the Championship in 2014.
Okay, yeah.
Then they had the greatest escape, where they were bottom of the table for like 300 days and still managed to survive. And then they won the Premier League.
Crazy, absolutely crazy, mate. And I mean, that the bulk of that was under Pearson, wasn't it?
Yeah. So Nigel Pearson came in 2008 when Leicester got relegated. He was actually the Southampton boss at the time on the day that Leicester got relegated. And it was his side winning and Leicester losing that meant that Leicester went down. And then he left Southampton and joined Leicester, and really rebuilt the side after a really torrid few years through various managers and various signings of players who, some of them didn't even play for the club. They came in, they didn't even play, and he rebuilt that side, got them back into the Championship, got to a playoff semi-final, then left to go to Hull, and then Leicester went through again a few managers, lots of signings under Sven-Göran Eriksson, and this is where the owners, I suppose, get a lot of credit. Is they tried to buy their way out the Championship, and it didn't work. And then they brought Nigel Pearson back, and then they rebuilt sensibly. And I think since that time, since they tried to throw a lot of money at it, the owners have been very, very different about how they recruit, how they act in the football club. And it was a learning curve for them. And spending all that money, and you probably look back on it, it's probably not that much money now, for a Championship club to spend. Back then it was. And then they learned their lessons. And that's why Leicester are sort of have that cuteness in the transfer market now, because it's that sort of learning curve that they've been on, and means that they can go and sign someone like Wesley Fofana, pretty unknown until he got linked with Leicester, and has turned out to be a ridiculous footballer, and gets rightly sort of compared to like a young Rio Ferdinand just because of the way he plays. He's that good.
Yeah, and I mean, Leicester's recruitment, for me, just going off sort of my own experiences down the year, really has shades of when David Moyes was at Everton. His recruitment, from the lower leagues and from elsewhere, was just absolutely spot on. And a lot is obviously made of Leicester's recruitment down the years from outsiders, and you've got your two obvious case studies that everybody points to, and N'Golo Kante and Riyad Mahrez, and the fact that they've been able to sell their best assets and rebuild to an equally just as good squad as we're seeing now, that are rightly so Leicester legends after winning the FA Cup. One of the ways I try to look at Leicester is that obviously they win the Premier League, which I want to talk a little bit about. I mean, going from Ranieri to Puel in a little bit, but the switch of selling Kante and Mahrez, obviously getting into the Champions League, you have access to that, just extra revenue that you can deal with. Obviously, is a greater appeal for other players to come in from elsewhere. But from yourself, obviously, that's in and around and in the bubble, I should say. How would you comment on just the astute recruitment and sort of vision of Leicester over the years in regard to the transfer market?
Well, as you say, you have the obvious case studies that they've got rid of, and Riyad Mahrez and N'Golo Kante recently, Harry Maguire and Ben Chilwell as well. So they've made an awful lot of money. Their cuteness in the transfer market is very good. But I think as a club outside of the top six, they can go into the lower realms of football around the world. So James Justin was playing in League One, got promoted with Luton, and they brought him in for 10 million. Now, if Manchester United go and buy James Justin for 10 million quid, and he's proven over the last couple of seasons that he's more than good enough to play in a top six, top four side. But if they go and do that, they are getting pelters off their fans.
Yeah, they get
and off the media as well. Like, why are Manchester United going in to buy a player from League One? He can't be that good. So Leicester have the benefit of doing that and being able to go and do that and not have that scrutiny. And also, I think it's about trust with the fans as well, and that the fans know that they can trust the recruitment at the football club now. And there have been some bad examples. I mean, you look at Islam Samane and Ahmed Musa and players like that who they went out and bought for big money, and it didn't necessarily work. But their vision is always around building a young squad that has profitability going forward, which helps keep the club in a really good position. And I think they've got to a stage now. The mantra always was, we'll sell one key player in the summer to bring two players in, or two or three players in. That's what we saw last summer. Ben Chilwell left, and they brought in Timothy Castagna, Dennis Pratt, and a number of other players as well. And those are the kind of players that Leicester need. Those sort of, and Brendan coins the phrase. It's called silver medalists. So he doesn't want players who have been playing in the top teams in each country, who have had everything handed to them on a plate. He wants players who have gone through a little bit of hardship, that have that grit. So they have that side of the game where, and also the talent to go with it, that he can coach. And those young players are often like that as well, because if you come through the Manchester United academy like Mason Greenwood, granted, of course, he's had to go through the trials and tribulations of becoming a Manchester United player, but it's not the same as getting released at 15 and then having to go and play in, non-league, and then getting a move abroad to France, and then coming back to England and playing in the Championship, and then coming to Leicester. And they're the sort of players that Leicester City look for and are after. And they're the players that will continue to take the club forward. And as I say, Leicester have the luxury and the benefit of being able to go and sign players, unknown players like that, and take a bit of a risk on players that the top six don't have. And that will only benefit them going forward, I think.
Yeah. Can you just jog me memory? Where was Ndidi from? Where'd you pull him from?
Ndidi was signed from Copenhagen, I think.
What a
yeah,
player.
Copenhagen.
What a player.
Yeah, he's a ridiculous player. I think he's the best holding midfielder in the Prem, without a shadow of a doubt. I know people talk about Declan Rice, and I know people talk about, Scott McTominay as well, but I just think he is head and shoulders above both of them. He is he's unbelievable. He's exactly what you need to sit in front of your back line in the way that Leicester play as well. And we've seen such progression from him over the last couple of seasons as well since Brendan has come in, because one thing that always lacked was his passing. His passing was awful. He would break the play up really, really well, and he'd go to spray it out, and it'd be out for a throw-in, or he always used to lift the ball. He never used to fire it across. He would lift the ball, and that would give players an opportunity to get back into position or intercept the ball before it even gets to its target. But we've seen, as I say, that progression where he's now firing balls left, right, and centre, and winning deep, and being able to go forward. And he can't shoot for love nor money. He can't shoot. So yeah, we'll park that to one side. I think the holding midfielder not being able to shoot is not the biggest issue in the world. But yeah, he's unbelievable. And again, 50 million quid he cost. That's all he cost. And it's that cuteness in the transfer market and working in certain realms of the market as well that has allowed Leicester to pick up players like him and players like Jamie Vardy for £1 million as well.
Yeah, of course. And this is coming from, I guess, my own area of interest, because I remember, obviously, we talked a little bit about Nigel Pearson. He eventually left. There's the whole debacle about him calling the reporter an ostrich and this and that. And Claudio Ranieri's come in, worked his magic. That season is absolutely incredible. Obviously, you go on to win the Premier League. Was it the season after that where he was fired?
Yeah, so it was in the Champions League season. Leicester just lost 2-1 away at Sevilla, which is not a bad result in the Champions League because you got the away goal. And of course, they came back the following week and Leicester beat them to go through to the quarters. But it was after that game that he got sacked,
Right.
Which was a strange time because, less than a year after winning the Premier League, you're getting rid of the manager sort of thing. And it was strange, but I think, maybe Leicester don't win that game against Sevilla if he stays. It was that sort of real sort of under new management bounce under Craig Shakespeare and that real sort of determination to go out there and do it and sort it. And yeah, it's a strange one. Maybe somewhere in a parallel universe, Leicester got relegated that season and whatnot, but you never know. But yeah, it felt really strange. It was really sad, I thought, because Claudio loved Leicester, and we all thought that he would probably be moved into sort of a role that didn't really do anything, getting moved upstairs because of his significance and what he did for the football club. But yeah, I was very surprised when he got sacked.
Yeah, that's football for you, mate, isn't it? It is just a game of what ifs. And the next full-time manager to take the post was Claude Puel, correct? Was from Saint Etienne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Craig Shakespeare was the assistant manager under Nigel Pearson and Claudio Ranieri, and then he got the full-time gig, and he got a 3-year contract. And 3 months into that, they sacked him, and brought in Claude Puel, who gets a lot of stick from Leicester fans. A lot of stick. And I think, he was very, very French in his ways, had a very, very thick French accent, a very deep voice that was almost sort of monotone. And every time I met Claude Puel, lovely bloke, would sort of never said anything untoward, was always really nice, was always very welcoming. But I think, he was a bit of a scapegoat. And I think the club knew that when they were bringing him in. I think they probably already had their eye on Brendan or someone else, but there was a rebuild job that needed to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And who better than Claude Puel, who was known at Southampton and known elsewhere for playing football on the deck, and playing nice football and developing young players. And all of a sudden we started seeing that change of the guard that old Premier League winning squad was starting to be moved on in places, and then younger players are being brought through. He signed James Maddison, Ricardo, those sort of players, and also had Yuri Tillemans on loan from Monaco in the January that he was, in the January before he got sacked. And he started the development of this team and what you see now Leicester playing, and broke up a team that probably needed to be broken up, because it could have been very easy to sit there and be sentimental about it. Oh, they won the Premier League, so they're legends. How do you move them on? But he came in with that. And I always think that everything happens for a reason as well. And yeah, he did the job that he was meant to be brought in for. Yes, he was probably made into a little bit of a scapegoat by the football club, because they needed to break up that side and bring in younger players, and they had a vision for the future. But he was the perfect man to lead Leicester and the city out of the grief of losing the chairman. Because he was so straight and so sort of emotionless most of the time, or sounded to be that way as well. He was the perfect man who was just that constant, so consistent all the way through. He was never electric and he was never awful. He was just consistent, and that, I think, was huge in leading the club out of that absolute tragedy. And without, I don't think Leicester are where they are now without Claude Puel. I think he gets undue stick from people. Yes, his football probably wasn't the best. Maybe it was a bit boring. Maybe Leicester, he didn't use Jamie Vardy in the way that he should have used Jamie Vardy. But he implemented a playing style that Brendan was able to come in and build upon, and he implemented a transfer strategy of bringing young players through and getting rid of the old guard that Brendan has benefited from as well.
Yeah, some excellent points that you make there, mate. And I think that stoic nature of a manager in particular, I think that's so important in football. There is often very much, as you say, an emotional sport. Someone that can come in level-headed and assess things, and just, as you say, be that constant in pushing things in the right directions. Before getting on to concluding on the media side of things, which I'm fascinated to hear about from yourself, as you say with Puel, I just, obviously this is an outsider's perspective. Obviously, may have been a bit boring from your end, but I can't recall things getting that bad on the pitch, like drastically bad. So I was just wondering. Obviously, there's a lot to be said, and a lot that people know about Rodgers. Obviously, from watching him at Liverpool and then Celtic. What were some of the key differences between a Puel side and the philosophy that Rodgers obviously went on to implement?
The aggression is certainly there with Brendan when it wasn't there with Claude Puel. Brendan's sides always start very fast and end the game really strong as well. And he implements that aggression where Leicester will be very, very resolute, and they wait for certain triggers. And the moment a ball gets played into a certain area, it's really interesting. If you watch like a whole Leicester game and just focus on this one thing, it's so interesting to watch, because they'll be just screen, and they'll screen and screen and screen, and then the moment the ball is moved into a certain area of the pitch, they swarm, and they're able to win the ball back in dangerous areas, and they set those traps, and then they work on them. And that's what's benefited them so well playing against some of the big sides. Another thing is pass selection as well. That the pass selection is more aggressive and more forward thinking. With Claude Puel, it was a lot of sideways, backwards, keep the ball, keep it safe sort of thing. Whereas Brendan likes to see that risk being taken. And we saw at the beginning of last season that Leicester played Chelsea. It was Frank Lampard's first home game in charge of Chelsea. And Wilfred Ndidi gave the ball away on the edge of the box, and Leicester went 1-0 down. And after the game, Brendan came out and was like, no, it's fine. I told him to do it. So I take the stick, but we will get better with doing that kind of thing going forward. And now they're able to play out from the back very, very well indeed. And I think one of the main differences that the fans definitely enjoy is the utilising of Jamie Vardy on such a different, a different level. Claude Puel's style didn't suit Vardy, and Vardy even said that in the press. And he said, "Listen, it doesn't suit me, but I do what I can." Whereas Brendan Rodgers has come in and gone, right, this is my style, but I need to adapt it around the greatest Leicester player of all time in Jamie Vardy, because he's, and he's just, as I say, the greatest player of all time and the talisman of this side, and leads the side, gets the biggest cheer from the fans. He's the fans' favourite. He is Mr. Leicester in a sense. And and you can see that last season when he wins the Golden Boot for the first time. So I think they're the main key differences that you see between a Claude Puel side and a Brendan Rodgers side, as well as having a go. They will go and they will try and beat the likes of Man City, and they will go to Tottenham and they'll try and beat Tottenham. They'll go to Manchester United, they'll beat Man United, and we've seen that. Whereas Claude Puel, it felt like he was very happy to sort of take a draw away at those sides and rebuild and win points elsewhere. Whereas Brendan wants to win every single game.
Okay. Yeah, you put that really, really well, mate. Thanks for sort of painting the picture for us in that respect. And so look now, maybe last 10, 20 minutes, just talking about the media landscape and your career. I mean, it's absolutely wonderful, I guess, that you've been in a capacity that you have in your career to sort of witness this over time, like to see the sort of revolutionary period in Leicester's history, and to, I guess, be where you've wanted to be in seeing that. And I guess that's why I was really sort of eager to have this conversation. And I'm really happy that we've got the chance to talk, because I could tell from the first couple of times that we've spoken that there are some sort of similarities in that, we're ambitious in the same industry. And I mean, at least one of our sides is doing well. But, but I mean, you talked about it there, when Leicester win the FA Cup post game, you've got no notes, and it doesn't matter because you're at a point in your career where you're comfortable on sort of reading the information that's going on around you and relaying that in a professional enough manner for it to be a high quality product. I mean, when you were growing up, is there something that you could always just sort of tunnel vision? This is what I wanted to do.
Yeah. So obviously the main aim, and I'm sure you were the same, the main aim was, I want to play for Leicester. And I'm sure yours was, I want to play for Everton as well. And I got to a point and I was like, you're 12, 13, you're not in an academy or anything like that. And I just thought, this, if it doesn't happen, what would be the next best thing? And the next best thing is watching Leicester and getting paid. So I started looking at ways, this is at like 12, 13 years old. I started looking at ways which I could actually do that. And I always listened to Radio Leicester, to the commentary. So I went to all the home games. I was a season ticket holder, but didn't get to many away games. So I'd always listen to sort of the away game coverage and also the post-match coverage from a home game as well. Get back in the car or get the little radio out. I used to have a little, it was like a little battery-powered radio that I used to take to the games with me and listen to on the walk back to the train station to the post-match coverage. And I always remember just thinking, like, I would love to do that. I would love to go and get paid to watch Leicester play, and that be my job, and being that person on the radio. And since then, so the guy that I work with now, one of the guys I work with on Sport Desk, Ian Stringer, he's our Leicester City commentator, and he had just started at Radio Leicester back then. And I found his email. I don't know how I did this. I found his email address. You'd never do it now with GDPR and all that kind of stuff. But I just started emailing him, and I would email him probably every couple of weeks, and just be like, "Can I come in? Can I come in and see what you do? Can you have a listen? I've made this package. Can you have a listen to this?" And I was downloading, editing software and just going, I'm going to make a package today. And yeah, so it was incredible. And I annoyed him that much that he was like, just bring him in. And there was a member of management at Radio Leicester who doesn't work there anymore. And he was like, can you please just bring him in? Because he just won't leave us alone. So my mum brought me into Radio Leicester, and they showed me around, and it was probably the worst thing they could have done, because it just made me annoy them even more. And after that, I started looking into how I could, maybe do radio even more. And I found a community radio station when I was 15 in a small town near me. And I went and I started presenting at this radio station, which was great. There were probably, I don't know how many people listened to that station. Probably not very many. It didn't have a very big sort of broadcast area, but it was that experience of being on the air, the experience of not swearing on the air, the experience of making yourself sound good. And then I started doing a podcast as well for a Leicester City fanzine, and built my own studio in my bedroom. It was a bit of a weird, surreal time, because I was just doing all sorts. And the one thing I was doing was this, but I wasn't concentrating maybe too much as at school. And I was using like sort of school time to like plan my shows, which was crazy. But yeah, and then eventually just kept annoying them, got some work experience, and pretty much after my work experience, I literally just never left. I did my work experience in this sort of March of 2015, and I then went back and sort of had impressed, and they managed to get me back in to do some training later that year. And then by the end of the year, I was working on our breakfast team, every day. And it's all about, I always think in this kind of industry, it's all about luck. You have to be in the right place at the right time, know the right people.
Yeah.
Because just as I was coming through, and a load of people at Radio Leicester left. So the person whose job I was doing had gone to 5 Live, and someone else had left to go and work at somewhere else, and someone else had gone to work at like a charity press sort of gig. And it just opened up this opportunity, and I was able to take it, and it was good. But that's how essentially I got in. I just annoyed people until they gave me work experience, and then made sure that when I got there, it was I just never ever left. Like, you've let me in now, you can't get rid of me. Like a bad smell, just never go away.
Nah, good man. It is one of those things. Like, I've had experience at like different studios at major broadcasters, and it gives you the itch, doesn't it? It gives you that sort of desire to just want to pursue it and live it as a career. One of the things that I'm reading from you there, from way back when, is almost like an affinity that runs exclusively to radio. There's obviously different forms of broadcasting, but for me there, listening to you, it seems like you and radio were just compatible all the way through, like your childhood coming through. And for me, I've got to be honest, that I discovered podcasts when I was relatively young. Like, they're still a developing technology, but they're a lot bigger now than they were like 10 years ago. I discovered podcasts when I was maybe like 14, 15, and just like listen to them religiously, because I love that long form platform for people to be able to express their ideas. They're not compressed to 1-2 minute sort of segments where they've got to sort of condense their thought process. This, as I say, long form, being able to flesh out your ideas. If you make mistakes, that ability to go back, correct yourself, just that sort of thing. It fascinates me, and it is still developing. People are integrating elements of video into it now. I think it's obvious any good podcast worth its weight has got to have a sort of video element to it. So I was just wondering, from your perspective as a radio guy, what have your observations been of podcasts over time and how they've developed?
Yeah, I think, I mean, as you say, sort of for me, audio is the thing for me. Like, in any kind of way, I don't really watch too much TV, or anything like that. I would much rather always be listening to radio, or listening to a podcast, or listening to music, or making stuff, like making audio. So I've always had that sort of affinity that goes with it. And it's strange. I remember when I started at Radio Leicester, people were like, "Oh yeah, you'll be like, what do you want to do? You want to go on the telly, or like, why would I want to go on the TV for? Like, why would I want to do that when, like, say, that TV has that compressed nature about it, whereas radio, you can express yourself in such a different way.
Yeah.
But podcasts, as you say, are such a developing thing, and they're really starting to pick up pace now. And I think the reason for that is because it's become more accessible for people to make podcasts. So when podcast first started, it was quite a limited number that was available, and they could do what they wanted, really, and there was sort of no kind of rules, which is a great thing for a podcast to have. There are no rules. You can do whatever you want. If you want to talk for 25 minutes, you can talk for 25 minutes. If you want to do sort of a shorter form kind of podcast, I mean, I listen to this incredible podcast every morning and every night, and it's called Wake Up, Wind Down, on Spotify, and it's just relaxing, sort of like not sort of, it's almost like not mental health, but it's almost like that sort of that mental time where you can just get rid of everything, and it's a bit of meditation and that kind of thing, and it's great, and it's an awesome way to start your day. Nice. And to also finish it as well. But I think the way that podcasts have developed is brilliant, and it has that individuality. Every podcast sounds totally different, and that is the reason I think that podcasts are such a brilliant thing, because they do all sound different, and they do all have their own character and nature, and it has that ability to be shorter to longer form, and you can do whatever you want with it. And the best ones are the ones that, you know, have a purpose for people. I always think, like, for example, we put a podcast out on Radio Leicester. We put a number of them out. So we have a football one, the Football Forum, and that takes our Football Forum podcast on a Monday, and it takes our post-match show from matches, and it also takes a sort of like a preview show that normally goes out on a Thursday or Friday. It takes that as well, and we're the most downloaded podcast in local radio, and that is something that we pride ourselves on as well. We have a Leicester Tigers one, we have a cricket one, we have sort of a more general sport, sort of inside sport one, and I just think every podcast has to have a purpose. So whether that's entertainment, whether that's sort of information, or whether it's a combination of the both, whether it's comedy, and yeah, the creativity that goes with it is probably the biggest thing that podcasts can have over anything, and it's why they're so important, because you can just do whatever you want with it and be as creative as you want to be.
Yes, that's very well put, and as you rightly say, the bandwidth is huge for people maybe who want to get into it but are unsure. You know, the best advice that you can give someone is to just go, isn't it? Really, just go. You know, get into it, and you know, because I could never have pictured myself being a podcast host. Now it's literally all I want to do. Like I'd love to do it for a career, you know. I've just moved into a flat, and literally BBC Radio Merseyside's over the road. So maybe I'll take a page out of your book and I'll knock on their door until they let me in. But
yeah,
to look at winding up the podcast now, mate, because I know we're both busy men. In regards to career ambitions going forward, I mean, like, you seem the type of guy to me, you could just, you know, watch Leicester City for the rest of your days and get paid and, you know, die a happy man. But in regards to your career ambitions, as you say, there's so many other developing opportunities with different technologies that require different skill sets, developing on current skill sets or acquiring completely, you know, new ones. What are you hoping to do going forward with your career?
Well, as you say, you know, I could easily do this job forever, because you know, it's all I've ever wanted to do as a job, and I'm awful at anything else. So I remember I worked in a shop before, I like part-time whilst I was freelancing at Radio Leicester, and I was the most awful shop assistant in the world, because all I would be thinking about is radio and what I was doing the next day, sort of thing. But yeah, I think in terms of career going forward, I mean, I've done a lot of presenting now, and I love presentation. I've done a few bits of commentary. I think my when I first came into it, what I wanted to be was the sort of commentator at Radio Leicester. But and that is that the guy that I annoyed first and foremost for years and years and years, Ian Stringer, and now we're good friends and we work alongside each other, and he's kind of like a mentor to me as well. At the moment, I mean, it would be great to be, you know, the commentator one day, but at the moment, I'm so happy in what I do because there is so much job satisfaction that you can get out of it, and you know, I watch Leicester City. I talk about Leicester City. I talk about football and rugby and cricket, and I literally just talk about sport at work, and that kind of thing is just perfect. I mean, that obviously the law of 5 Live is always something that is spoken about amongst sort of sport journalists, particularly within the BBC. But I always look at it and I think 5 Live is great. And I would love to present at 5 Live. How good would that be, present on a national radio station? But I can't do the same things there as I do here.
Yeah.
If there was a way to split them, that would be perfect, sort of across the week. But it's I'm very much I don't think too much about the future. I always like to sort of live in the moment. I sound like a complete hippie. You know, but it is one of those things that, particularly over the last couple of years, and even more within the pandemic, is that I live now sort of very much day to day and or sort of week to week, and I don't look too far ahead, and I just enjoy the moment. And one thing that I know this, and I know how important it is to people, you know, people like yourself maybe who you know want to get into sort of somewhere like Radio Merseyside, or you know there might be someone listening to this who really wants to just do everything they possibly can. But I remember all I would do is work. It would just be work, and then at the weekend a bit more work, and it's bad. It is so bad.
Yeah.
As much as it can benefit your career going forward, it will not make you happy in the long run, and that would be the only thing that I would say is that, you know, work is just work, and yes, it's incredible, and you want to be the best you can be, but one thing that this pandemic has taught me is that, you know, you have to have a life outside of that as well. Like we were meant to be recording this podcast yesterday, but I had a meeting about buying a house. So you know, it's all those kind of things that, you know, you have to live your life and you have to do things and not just focus so much on the work. And I think I'm at that point now where I think my work life is just so happy because I'm doing what I'm doing, and my personal life is so happy as well. And that for me, just, you know, I'm just completely zenned out and just very, very happy with what I'm doing. So it's weird. I know I've gone off on a bit of a tangent there, but the sort of career goal is, for me, I've always just been, I'm not motivated by money at all in any sort of walk of life or anything. I just want to be happy. And if I'm happy doing what I'm doing, then that is the career goal. Just.
Yeah. I mean, that's beautiful, man. That's absolutely beautiful. And I mean, some of the points that you raise even there, like lifestyle and things like that, are things that I could go on and talk to you about for another hour, 2 hours, if we had the time. But I know we've got stuff to crack on with. And, you know, as I say, Owynn, it's been a pleasure to talk with you, mate. And in the future, I do hope that you'll come on for some future podcasts, and hopefully that our paths will cross at some point in the future. As I say, thanks for coming on.
No, thank you for having me. And yeah, anytime you want to talk to me, I'm more than happy to come on and have a chat.
Thanks, brother. Take care.
Cheers, mate. Thank you very much. See you later, buddy.
Cheers. Take care.